Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome to Our Issues Birmingham. I am Tommy Spina, and I am delighted today to have my very good friend, one of my oldest living friends, I might add, Charlie Waldrep, as my guest.
Glad to be here.
It's great having you here, Charlie. The reason Charlie's here, aside from the fact that he's got just an abundance of knowledge about a lot of different things, some of which is relatively insignificant, I guess you well know. He also wrote a piece for David Scher, who's also a guest of ours on occasion, called Comeback Town. And it had to do with a consolidation of services in the county to try to bring more unity and cooperation amongst the various governments in our county. And I thought it was a great topic. So we're going to talk about that. But before we talk about that, how'd you end up in the spot you ended up in? Everybody thinks you're like King Rat.
You know, actually, Tommy's being very kind. I've been trying to get on this program for literally years, and he keeps saying, if you'll do something that I think is worthy of being on here, I'll get you on the program. So, you know, I've done all sorts of things, and I would write letters, and then I started a campaign of getting other people to say, you know, it'd really be good to get Charlie Waldrep to be on your program. And he said, well, you know, he needs to do this. So I finally went to David Scher, and I slipped him a couple of bucks, and he let me write this column, and then I got to be on here. So thank you. I appreciate it. It took a while. Yeah. Whatever. So that's how I got to be in the guest seat.
As Larry David once said, whatever works.
Yeah, whatever works, it works. But in any event, I appreciate the invitation.
So you're a Woodlawn boy.
Went to Woodlawn. Well, I'm not a Woodlawn. I graduated from Woodlawn, but I grew up in Huffman. And my family moved here in 1951. I was 3. Moved from North Georgia. All my relatives are from North Georgia. And I have 2 older sisters. They were teens, but they finished at Woodlawn. I have a younger brother that finished at Huffman, and then went on to Jacksonville State, and then I went to Cumberland Law School. And when I finished at Cumberland, I stayed here in town, so I'm here.
And have you always been in the private practice, or did you work with some
Well, I took a sabbatical for a couple of years and went to work for the state of Alabama in the 90s, and went to work for Jim Folsom when he was governor.
I remember that.
Yeah. I had a good government job. Unfortunately, they asked me to leave.
When the transition occurred?
Yeah, when he left, no, and that was Fob James. Governor James. Well, he didn't ask me to leave. I had the good judgment to know that it was time for me to go.
Well, isn't that the norm?
Yeah, that is.
The transition of power when things change in government. Yeah. So as time went on, Waldrep, Stewart, and Kendrick, which is your law firm.
That's our firm, yeah.
Became quite active in many of the agencies of city government for the city of Birmingham. And
about becoming active in many,
as legal representation.
Yeah, long time lawyers for the Birmingham Water Works Board, probably best known for that. But we've also represented a number of municipalities that are completely unrelated to the city of Birmingham. That's really the only affiliation we had with the city of Birmingham was that. I served on the Birmingham Park and Recreation Board as a member from 1985 until 1993. Outside of that has been our relationship with the city of Birmingham. I take that back. If you count the Board of Education, which is an independent board, elected board, Tom Stewart and Leslie Clasing in our firm still do some work.
Well, it just happens to be a niche that your firm specializes
in. It is. We started, Tom and Mike and I started practicing law together in 1978. We're still together, which I think is somewhat of a record.
Just for Wall and Spina.
Yes,
78 as well.
78, okay.
I didn't realize that.
Still together after all these years.
Yep. Most marriages don't last that long.
And at one time we had like 40 lawyers, and we did everything. We did divorces, and we did criminal work, and we did bankruptcies and divorces. And then, maybe 15 years or so ago, we decided to winnow down our practice just with those that, like myself and Tom and Mike, we were doing what we call public sector work, representing public agencies and entities. And so those lawyers that did that, that's what we do. So the ones that are with us now, we have we do some personal injury work. We do some estate work, but by and large, the bulk of what we do is we represent public bodies and public entities, and we represent companies that do business with public bodies and entities. Obviously, not the ones that we represent, but some of those.
And the idea is to keep them on the straight and narrow so
That's
as
right.
to avoid potential problems.
Well, not only just to avoid potential problems, but you bring some economies of scale to that so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If somebody's got a public records issue or they've got a bid law issue, we don't have to go back and find out, well, what are they talking about? We've got somebody there that's probably seen that over the past 40 years. They've seen whatever that is. So it just makes it easier for us to do that.
Well, I think we need to mention the Birmingham Waterworks Board to some degree.
Sure.
Because for years you were positioned as one of their lawyers.
Yeah.
And our local guest, John Archibald, used to refer to you. He's on our show quite frequently, and we'll have him back sometime soon. Yeah. But he's sometimes referred to you as the godfather of water or something to that effect. That it's somewhat in a maligning way, but he's just poking at you, I think, because that's his style. Wow. That just happened to be your area of expertise.
Comes with the territory. Well, we started representing the Birmingham Waterworks in 1986 or so, I suppose, and proud of our service there. I think that the service we rendered was very valuable to the ratepayers. We were successful in resisting a number of class action cases that would have had a very debilitating effect on the rates and the ratepayers. We were successful in getting the assets of the board returned from the city to an independent board, which we're very proud of. So I know John, and I take what John says with a grain of salt. John is, I suppose John's a journalist.
He is.
John
a journalist with an opinion.
That's right.
We'll be right back. Don't leave us. Charlie Waldrep's our guest, and I'm Tommy Spina. Don't go away. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. I'm Tommy Spina. Today's guest is Charlie Waldrep, who really needs no introduction, especially since he has just mentioned that he was the poster child for John Archibald and his column.
You just introduced me, so I don't need an introduction again. So there you go.
Stop it. It's my show.
Okay.
Charlie, what got you here was the article you wrote for David Scher's Comeback Town.
That's right.
Yes, I believe we've been held back as a city, the city of Birmingham, which I believe encompasses those 34 municipalities beyond the city limits of Birmingham. Some say that our growth has been stunted because we have such a separation of services amongst the various municipalities, and that there's inefficiency and we're not working. How can we fix that? How can we bring all these people together?
Okay, here's what's not going to happen. And you and I are about the same age. It's not going to happen in my lifetime or your lifetime. And it's probably not going to happen in our children's lifetime. And they're somewhere in that area. We're not going to have some government where you've got an umbrella that includes everything: public safety, public education, streets, public works. That's not going to happen. I don't think we're going to see that.
Police.
Yeah. I think that you just have too many cities. You're almost at 40 independent municipal corporations within the county. And for whatever reason, there are people in every one of these that they just like having their own city government. It may be for different reasons. It may be because of their school system. It may be because of their police department. It may be because they just like to be able to call their city hall, and the city clerk that they know by first name picks up the phone and they can say, "I need the pothole fixed." For whatever reason, they don't want to have to deal with some metro government for whatever that is. So we have to cherry pick the things that make sense and let's look at what has worked for us in the past and see if we can build on that. So some examples of things that have worked are E911. And every county across the country has E911. When you dial 911, it was confusing to us when we went to that because we're thinking, we did dial 911 and it was going to a different place and it got confusing. So then this E911 comes out and we're wondering, well, how do we dial do we dial the E on there and then dial 911? But it's just 911. But when you dial that now, you no longer go to your local dispatcher. You go to a dispatcher who then finds out where you are, and then they send you to your local dispatcher. So that system works, and that's something we can build on. Another really, really good example of something that works is our library system. You live in Vestavia. I live in Birmingham. I can go to the library in Vestavia and pick out a book, and I can turn it in when I get through with it at the Avondale Library.
Homewood as well.
Sure. Or yeah, you could go to the Avondale Library over there that's fairly near your office, or go to the one closest to your office would probably be the one over there in 5 Points, and check out a book, and then drop it off at the Homewood Library on your way home. And that works. And that's the kind of regional cooperation that we ought to be working toward. So let's find things that work. Look at what the sheriff has done. The sheriff has put together this metropolitan crime force that he has. It's called MAC, the acronym. And he's got 12 municipalities that have joined this, and they're using cutting edge, the best of the best investigators to go after difficult crimes. And they're working together. And these 12 municipalities are using their best techniques, their best crime fighters to solve crimes. So it's not a metropolitan police force, but it has all the advantages of a metropolitan police force. So why don't we build on that concept? The county has a purchasing association that they set up, and 20 of the municipalities in Jefferson County have already joined that, so that you can have a town the size of Kimberly with maybe 5,500, 6,000 people that has the purchasing power of Jefferson County or the city of Birmingham with 200,000 people. So they can buy their bolts at the same price that they're buying for a much larger municipality at the same price. So those are the things we should build on.
Well, the thing that stands out about what you just said, and we've got to go to break in just a minute, but we have 18 in one, the purchasing group, and 12 in the other. I would like to talk about, when we come back from break, what efforts are being made to recruit those others, if you're aware of it, to get an even bigger cooperative effort in those areas. This is Our Issues Birmingham. I'm Tommy Spina. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. I'm Tommy Spina. We're talking about cooperation amongst the various municipalities in the county, a subject that I think is important to our lifestyles in the city, and that we all work together. You mentioned before break that we had about 50%, not quite 50%, of the municipalities joined in on the law enforcement piece and on the purchasing piece.
That's right.
Are there efforts that you're aware of being made to recruit others? And why would someone not go for that, especially the purchasing piece?
Everybody's invited to participate, so they're all aware of it.
If they're not aware now, would be the time?
This would be a good time for them to join, but the sheriff has invited everybody to join this. And there's a nominal cost on the purchasing piece, but it's negligible compared to the benefits. Oh, yeah. And the county administers everything, so there's no real cost to be involved. But what I've identified in that article were, and there's probably many other areas, but the three areas that, in my opinion, these are headshots. These are just no-brainer, simple. One is, that might be a good question for your next guest when the mayor's on. The city of Birmingham has got to have a new jail. That's without question.
Hotel.
Got to. Mayor Bell had announced plans to build a $40 million facility in Inslee that was going to be a public safety facility with a jail. And that never got any traction. So that still has to be done. Every municipality, with the possible exception of Hoover, that already has a state-of-the-art jail, and Homewood, who's got a jail, I understand, on the drawing boards. But the rest of the municipalities,
Vestavia has a decent jail now.
Yeah, now they do. Now they do. That's correct. But for the most part, they'd like to get out of the jail business. It's a dark hole.
I agree. I've always maintained that.
Yeah. So if you could enter into an agreement to have a metropolitan jail, Birmingham's got to have a jail, and let Birmingham maintain that, and you pay a certain fee or whatever. That could be a good thing. That would be a good way for these cities to save money. At the same time, it'd be a big benefit to Birmingham to help lower the cost of that, having some people contribute to it, and be efficiencies that you bring to it.
One of the complaints from law enforcement about that concept is the transportation component of bringing the individual from the west side or wherever this jail is.
That's a legitimate concern, but if you put the conferencing televisions in that you're familiar with, that they use in other courts, you wouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
And also, if you went another step and you were to put a 6 or maybe 8 bed infirmary in there, then you wouldn't have to be taking people to the hospital and having round the clock 2 sheriff's deputies or 2 police officers in there. So there's a great deal of money that could be saved by having that kind of regional cooperation. Another one would be a regional landfill, a solid waste authority.
Good point.
Every municipality, without exception, collects garbage. Some of them outsource it, some of it use public works, but they pick up household garbage, household waste. If they put it out for bid, then that collector takes it to their landfill site, or they take it to a landfill site. And it's called a tip fee per tonnage about how much they charge for putting it in the landfill. So that tip fee varies. Some of it's outside the county, some of it is within the county. So if you had a landfill within the county that was a regional landfill, and you said, okay, we're going to set this tip fee at an arbitrary rate, pick out the rate. Instead of $22 a ton, it's going to be $12 or $14 or whatever that is. And then if you put it out for bid, a company that maybe previously they were charging a larger fee because they owned a landfill, they were trying to handle the debt service, they're knowing they're not taking it to their landfill. Maybe their bid would be higher, but there may be a company that comes in that doesn't own a landfill that would pick that up for a much lower rate and pay a much lower rate for the tipping fee, and there'd be a great deal of money that would be saved. They do this in other cities. This is not a new concept.
Not something you just came up with.
No, I wish I could take credit for it, but this would be a really easy fix for a problem, and the city of Birmingham has to have this. They've got 2 landfills, and they need to be closed, and they're filling up. One needs to be closed right now. The other one has a life of maybe 5 or 6 years left. And the third idea is about community service, getting municipal courts to start using community service for indigents. That's coming anyway. But if we could have some uniformity with that, there's tens of thousands of volunteer hours that we could use for people that have misdemeanor crimes that could benefit the community, where they really just don't have the money. Sometimes they're indigent, but sometimes they're not.
Sometimes they're not.
You know.
Well, some of the resistance to the concept of community service is potential liability for the city. I think that's paralysis by analysis myself.
I do too, as well.
Because I mean, we're not putting them in places where they're subject to liability. I mean, we're putting them in horticultural situations or paper picking up situation.
You know, if you really wanted to give a person an option, if you really, and I think you've overanalyzed it, as you say, but you could say you have an option. You can either perform this community service, or there's an area that we're going to set aside. It's in a room. You're not locked in. It's in a secure area. You cannot have any magazines, books, telephone, or anything else, and you can sit there for 8 hours by yourself. And we'll give you 8 hours credit for that. You don't go to jail. And I think most people would see the benefit of providing community service. We had a couple just recently, one of the courts around the prosecutor, and they elected community service over going to anger management. And they're going to provide 100 hours each at either the Salvation Army or at
First Light,
First
something
Light.
like that.
Yeah, and they're going to get a great deal more benefit from that. And so do the people.
The entities.
Sure.
Great idea. Community service. Well, thanks for being with us, Charlie.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm going to take you up on your offer.
Let's not let it be 3 years before you do this again.
4.
Oh, okay. Who's counting?
I'm Tommy Spina. This is Our Issues Birmingham. We will see you next week.